Hey peeps, it is a glorious early fall day here in New England. I'm feeling so witchy and mystical and just excited to be with you guys. So I hope that you are doing well wherever you are out there in the world. And I'm happy to be able to share and spend a little time with you today. So you will notice that there are two videos on the channel today. Both are like an A and B for the same subject. I recently had a viewer reach out and ask if I would share deck list recommendations for healing from religious trauma. And so there is this video, which is my tarot deck list recommendations for healing from religious trauma. There's also going to be a second video today, which is my oracle deck list recommendations for healing from religious trauma. I decided to put them in two separate videos. Number one, for time constraints. Also because I do feel that I work with tarot and oracle with a different view and focus when it comes to my own healing journey, healing from the religious cult that I was raised in as well. So you can reference either or both of these videos if you are healing from religious trauma, or even just trauma that is uniquely specific to you and your journey. You may find these decks helpful as well. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list. These are the decks that I have found to be really poignant and powerful when it comes to opening up to the shadow work aspect of healing from my own religious trauma, and also finding a sense of empowerment, of unity within myself, healing from those experiences as well. So without further ado, let's talk about the tarot decks on the list. So I'm going to start by talking about Straight Up Rider-Waite-Smith. This is the Pamela Coleman Smith Centennial Edition. Just to start, why is the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith on the list? Number one, the symbolism, if you are new to tarot, it's very easy to, at least I found, to transfer kind of the black and white thinking that you can develop when you deal with very strict religious either upbringing or indoctrination on your journey. You engage in a lot of really strong black and white thinking typically. You're conditioned to view things that way. And I do find that the kind of simplicity and hearkening back to earlier times that Pamela Coleman Smith artwork has for us in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is very helpful when you are kind of deconditioning your mind and you're also looking to open up to more of an intuitive and a softening or a gentling around inclusion in regards to your thinking, right, instead of exclusion. So the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, not only is it, you know, the basis and foundation of a lot of our tarot work, and so it's helpful to have an understanding of, I do think that the artwork and some of the correlation with occult symbolism and religious tradition do dovetail very much so. And so this deck can be a nice way to bridge one way of thinking and viewing things and opening up to another perspective. So if you are on the fence, have a limited budget, you're new to tarot as well, and this is all a new journey for you, then I think starting with Pamela Coleman Smith Centennial Rider-Waite-Smith deck is a great place to start. Now, I have also included the Toth Tarot on this list. Crowley is, I mean, if you want to rebel and you were raised in a strictly Christian environment, or you have recently left that type of environment, Crowley is about as rebellious as you can get. It's the opposite end of the spectrum. So in some ways, in other ways, it's actually very, very familiar. But I digress. That's another video. The Toth Tarot is steeped in symbolism, steeped in occult tradition. The artwork is just evocative of everything that's juicy and delicious about tarot. And there's a real structure that you can sink your teeth into and study, which is very comforting for the mind as it releases, again, how it's been conditioned. And as it unplugs from a grid of disempowerment, shame, and guilt. So this is a wonderful irreverent deck with a lot of layers. You can do a lot of studying, sink your teeth into it, enjoy it, and much like all of the occultists of old, of yore, there is a correlation to biblical myth and biblical story in symbolism, in visions, etc. And so you'll see that that's echoed in the artwork within the Thoth Tarot. And I think it's, again, another great bridge. So if you're really feeling stuck on your journey and you're just not sure where to start, grab the Thoth Tarot, grab the Pamela Coleman Smith edition of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and allow yourself to start exploring the structure of tarot in a way that, I don't know, just kind of like lets you flow a little more fluidly, a little more easily from one strict tradition into a structure that's a living, breathing aspect of your path. So we had to start with those two. And especially if you're new to tarot, I think that those are great ones to start with. So now I kind of want to move out into more shadow work focused terrain, because when you unplug from religious trauma, you're going to find that what comes up in your spiritual path work, if you are doing any kind of practice that's related to witchcraft, left-hand path, alternative spirituality, you're going to come up against shadow work. And there are certain tarot decks which are really beautiful for that. So I want to go to that next, and then I want to finish with more of decks that I found to be very empowering, especially around the sacred feminine. So when it comes to healing from shadow, the Pulp Tarot by Todd Alcott, which I absolutely love. I haven't talked about a great deal on the channel recently, but I do really love this deck. This deck is really great for healing from, especially if you were raised in a type of environment I was, that very like 50s, I mean, it is pulp art, so it makes sense, but that kind of 50s idea of the traditional roles of masculine and feminine within a family environment or within exchanges between men and women. This deck, the artwork is gorgeous for what it is, but also it's very evocative of what many of us have been told or raised or stepped into from a religious tradition of how men and women should be, and how the American family or the perfect family should look. So this is a really beautiful deck for offering yourself some shadow work opportunities and healing around that, in my opinion. Primarily because the artwork does harken to that time period, and so it kind of encourages you to get into your discomfort and how you've perhaps taken on some of those ideas or are really trying to unplug from those ideas as being a truth for you. So if you're looking to do shadow work around that, like, those traditional roles that you've been told are righteous or spiritual, etc. Yeah, I find this deck to be very powerful in that it can activate looking into that shadow aspect for myself, and also allowing some lightness and breath around it, because the artwork is gorgeous, as well as activating those areas. And so that can give us another lens and help us to shift perspective, to get into a little hanged man energy there. So the Pulp Tarot by Todd Alcott, not only a gorgeous deck, but as I said, the artwork can really help you to go into and dive into those kind of traditional roles that have been handed down as like the pinnacle of, religious perfection, etc. Now, you all know that the other deck I'm going to recommend in regards to the shadow work piece, the Ceccoli Tarot by Nicoletta Ceccoli. Anyone who wants to do shadow work knows that this deck is a fucking kick in the teeth. It's exactly what is ordered when it comes to shadow work, but I want to express the caveat: do not work with this deck if you are not in a grounded space for shadow work. The artwork will bring up any kind of trauma or abuse that you may have dealt with. And I do want to affirm that it brings it up in a way that's empowering, and that you can deal with it by acknowledging it, by looking at it, right? But it is very activating, And you just want to be careful that you give yourself time to unplug and stay grounded through the process of working with the deck. Therefore, it is not a daily deck for me, but it is an essential deck for me in my life because of the gift that this deck gives us, which is really powerful activation around trauma and shadow work, okay? Again, just want to affirm, don't work with this deck if you're not in a grounded, healthy space to dive into those areas of your own story, of the religious story in general, as well as the specific strain of religion that you are trying to unplug from and heal from. And I do keep using the word unplug very specifically because it is an unplug. You actually have to consciously disconnect and walk back beliefs and rules and stories and ideas of right and wrong and reward and punishment that you've had like hammered into your mind. And if you were in a very strictly religious experience, I want to affirm for you that that was very consciously done. And so the unplug aspect takes time. And a deck like this can help you to get into the nitty gritty in those areas. You know, even for me, I left my parents' religion for the final time in my very early 20s. I'm 39 right now. I'm still healing these wounds, okay? So the journey with that is a lifelong journey. And the Ceccoli Tarot is a wonderful deck to have on board to help you get into the nitty gritty of those areas where we can get stuck around beliefs and conditioning that we aren't even aware are still like under our skin and within ourselves. And this is a really powerful deck for that. Again, this is the Ceccoli Tarot. I strongly recommend it if you are in a space on your healing journey from religious trauma where you can really look at your shadow areas and the shadow wounds. I don't recommend this if you're brand new to tarot and or if you are not in a grounded space, okay? But this is probably the most powerful deck on this list for this type of work. Okay, next I'm going to go to the Hayworth Tarot. Excuse me. This deck has low-key been a secret of mine for some time, but I am getting more public with sharing because it's such a powerful deck. So again, this is the Hayworth Tarot. This deck is really great for looking at our own discomfort and uncomfortable truths. And so if you are looking to, again, unplug, disconnect from, you know, whether it's very stringent set of rules on who's a good person, who's a bad person, or reward and punishment, good and evil. If you're really looking to kind of shift those, flip those narratives on their head for you inwardly, this is a great deck to push you in that way. It's a beautifully uncomfortable deck. I love this deck so much. It's so flipping amazing. But it's really gonna nudge you. It's going to ask you to look at things that are uncomfortable, and it's such a great deck to journey with. It's such a great deck to, let me say that again, journey, yes, but also journal with. You can really just follow a series of prompts and go to town with it, because the artwork is just uncomfortable enough and just that much different than the traditional imagery. It flips it on its head just enough that it can really activate this flow of, like, I know for me, when I journal with this deck, it's very easy to like just access this like old stuff, you know? And like there's a beautiful purging that happens as you are able to acknowledge that, whether that's through journaling or saying it out loud as you look at the spread, or even just looking at the spread as a whole and acknowledging what comes through as a whole. This one is a really great one for that. So that's the Hayworth Tarot. That's an independently produced deck, but it's actually very, oh my God, what's the right word? Reasonably priced. There we go. It's very reasonably priced, independently produced deck. Okay, so the next two decks on my list, I'm going to show just as they are. I'm not going to show the imagery. I have specific videos for these two decks. So if you want more information on that, you can check out those two reviews. But the Notoria and the Goetia by Fabio Lestrani, these are tarot decks and they're oracle decks. It covers the shadow and the light, the demons and the angels. So not only are you working with two decks that are associated with the Christian pantheon, these decks are really powerful, really strong energies, and they can give you an opportunity to connect with and to talk with entities within the Christian pantheon and have an opportunity to rewrite your own story, to rewrite your own myth, and to flip Christian ideas of angels and demons on their head, and really provide an opportunity for healing and activation for yourself in a new way. So this is the Goetia Tarot and the Notoria Tarot by Fabio Listrani. They're very, very powerful. Please use them intentionally. But I found them to be very healing when it comes to dealing with my own religious trauma and looking to step into a new chapter in regards to my story with angelic energy, specifically for me, because I really struggle with angelic energy, but also to open up to working with demons in a new way as well. So that's the Goetia and the Notoria decks by Fabio Listrani. Okay. So this next deck kind of bridges the gap between the shadow work piece, you know, looking at the dirty layers and allowing yourself to access your own purity and healing, which have been the first decks on this list. And now we're moving into more of a message of empowerment, embracing the feminine, bringing her voice to the table as equally as the masculine. Right? And so this deck bridges the gap of these. And that is Ian Daniels' Tarot of Vampyres. You guys knew this deck's going to be on the list. This is the most healing tarot deck I have ever worked with personally in my life. It's a deck that changed my life. It's the deck that I'm known for in the YouTube community for working with, excuse me. And it's a very powerful deck offering empowerment, embracing of the sacred feminine, of the divine feminine, as well as the divine masculine. And it also works with occult symbolism in such a way that if you've dealt with a lot of rigorous study and strict rules and very concrete symbolism, this deck can also help you bridge the gap into more of an open way of working with symbolism and magic. Excuse me. So this is Ian Daniels' Tarot of Vampyres. The guidebook is amazeballs and also provides opportunity for study and research. So if you were raised in an environment like me where you had to study every night and you had to do lots of hands-on research with approved publications, then this will just really get to the joy of studying and research, which I will say from my upbringing I have carried forward and do find to be a positive takeaway. So this is a great deck for sinking your teeth into, as I like to say. And this is Ian Daniels' Tarot of Vampyres. If you're looking for an all-around choice and option here, I would say go with Tarot of Vampyres, because it's going to give you, you know, the structure of tarot, multiple schools and modalities within tarot, study and research, beautiful art, and an ability to go deep into shadow work with the guidebook. Okay, final two decks on the list, guys. The Shimmering Veil Tarot. So moving now more into that empowerment aspect. This beautiful deck was gifted to me, and it's absolutely gorgeous in the way that it can evoke, in my opinion, angelic realms, the sacred feminine within that energy, and opening up to that purity and grace within ourselves. So one of the huge kind of grids of disempowerment that gets placed on us with religious conditioning is a sense of shame for the physical form, but especially around anything feminine. And I feel like the artwork in this deck, activates healing around the intuitive, the sacred feminine, the feminine within ourselves, and again, the intuitive, the psychic realms. It allows us to start to build trust with those realms and to really connect with that beautifully. So this is a tarot deck. I would say you want to have some knowledge of traditional tarot structure when you work with this, or at least I would recommend that, but it's a really beautiful one for activating empowerment around psychic ability, intuition, and the sacred feminine. So that is the Shimmering Veil Tarot by Scylla Conway. And I do, just bear with me, I do want to put this one back in the box because I want to take care of that deck. All right. My final deck on the list for healing and empowerment when it comes to tarot with healing from religious trauma is the She-Wolfe Tarot. by Serpent Fire. This deck does contain nudity. I chose this deck over others for the main reason that I do think the Divine Feminine is really powerfully represented. Nudity is strongly represented in this deck, which speaks to the purity of this and sacredness of the profane. So when you're trying to heal and reconcile that from a religious traumatic experience, this deck lends itself well to that. It also has connection to Thoth, so it works within that structure, and it has this gorgeous, very like 70s tone, but also slightly Egyptian pantheon, which I have to say, if you're going to heal from religious trauma, the Egyptian pantheon is definitely a lovely option if you feel called to connect with it. I certainly found it to be deeply healing in my own journey as well. So if you're looking for an empowering deck around the sacred feminine, one that's going to help you confront polarities and how to reconcile and release guilt and shame from spiritual and religious trauma, this is a glorious deck for that, and I highly recommend it. I'm not sure if it's available for purchase right now, but if it is, I will try and remember to put the link below. So these are the tarot decks that I would recommend if you're looking to heal from religious trauma. The other thing that I would just encourage here as we finish this installment of this deck list little duology here, I would just encourage you to be patient and to take your time. Be gentle with yourself if you're unplugging from religious trauma. Know that you're going to have good days and bad days. You know, you'll take a few steps forward and then you'll feel like you take 5 steps back for every 2 or 3 you take forward. Be gentle with yourself. Give yourself time. If you wake up one morning and you feel freaked out and you want to throw out all your tarot decks, and you do that because, you know, you're working with the devil, and then you have to come back around to center, don't be hard on yourself for that. You know, don't be hard on yourself for that. Remember that the conditioning that happens within religions is very consciously chosen by those who are in charge, because they're able to manipulate and enforce through this type of inculcation and through the stringent rules, through the idea of good and evil and punishment and reward. So there's been a level of control that's been very consciously exerted upon your mind, your body, and spiritually. So be gentle with yourself as you unplug. Allow yourself to grow, to evolve, but also to grieve, because it's an important part of the process. So for the viewer who requested this, I hope you find this list helpful. As always, I am sending you all so much love and many blessings, and I will see you in the next video.